Greetings. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out to our group author reading today. This reading is brought to you by Strong Women, Strange Worlds, a group of authors supporting authors. Our mission is to elevate the voices of women and other underrepresented gender identity authors of science fiction, fantasy, and horror through events like our bi-monthly virtual quick read sessions. You can find out more about Strong Women, Strange Worlds in the handout that we're providing in the chat, and also by visiting our website, and you'll get this link in the chat as well. It is strongwomenstrangeworlds.weebly.com. So I'll be your host today. My name is Elaine Isaak. You can find out more about me in the provided handout as well. Recording of the session is not allowed by audience members. Recording with electronic communications, including Zoom meetings and webinars, without the permission of everybody involved. That's why that little box pops up on your screen. These videos are going to be mostly for the authors, and they will show up later on on our YouTube channel if we do have permission to do that. So today we'll be featuring 6 authors: Alicia McCalla, Ren Hutchings, Anna Kashina, DC Gomez, M. Dressler, and Jody Lynn Nye. Each author will have 8 minutes to read. Our first reader today will be Alicia McCalla. Alicia McCalla writes kick-ass Black women main characters for nerds who want to see themselves represented in fantasy, sci-fi, and horror, and love thrilling stories of courage, bravery, and strength. Alicia, take it away.
This is from my short story in the anthology, The Fey Witch's Pregnancy. We're pregnant. I waved the pregnancy test around like it was a magical wand while dancing in the condo bathroom. That may have been too much. I mean, I was a fey witch, but not the warm and cheerful fairy godmother kind. As it was, I struggled with keeping up my facade. Did you hear me? I allowed the excitement to rush off me in waves. It was impossible to contain my happiness. For a moment, I almost dropped the human mask held together by my fey glamour, which might have been disconcerting to my boyfriend. Dylan studied me like he was burning a worm with a magnifying glass and losing interest once the poor creature died. What? We're gonna have babies soon. I knew this was exactly what we needed, a family. The truth is, he'd been my world for the last year. I loved everything about him. His scent, chiseled face, muscle-bound arms, the way he held me tightly, blanketing me in love and protection. People were envious of what we had. It would certainly help us through the storms we were weathering together. It seemed lately, though, the more effort I put into pleasing him, the angrier he got with me. But babies would certainly bring us together. No, he said, not stopping to look at me. He kept shoving things inside his suitcase. But I tried to be cautious. Last night, you said we were taking our relationship to a new level. I meant we weren't a thing anymore and that this relationship is over. I slid in next to where his bag was sitting on the bed and tried my hardest to make myself seem willing to please him like human women did. It was rather annoying, but I had one objective: to get him to stay. But we did that thing together and you enjoyed it. I batted my eyes, flung my dreadlocks back in a sexy way, and opened my legs. We could do it again if you like. Leave me alone, he barked, opening his drawers and shoving more things into his suitcase. That was breakup sex. My stomach turned in on itself. I stood up. Dylan, I can be anyone or anything you want, anytime you want. I had to be careful, considering my emotions were high, and I really didn't want him to see the real me. He truly wasn't ready for that yet, so I would say what he needed to hear. No matter what, I couldn't lose him. I had to have him. I needed everything about his tall, brown skin and fine self. He was so very perfect. He kept packing, refusing to look at me. You're too needy. I grabbed him by the waist, hugging him tightly. Shoving me away, he repeated himself, I'm leaving. Though it was out of character for me, I was going to get down on my hands and knees and beg him to stay if need be. Regardless of how he'd react, I had to persist with my acting. He just couldn't leave. No, I need you. You and I are a match made in the cosmos in every way. I blocked the entrance to the bedroom door so he couldn't go. Narissa? He had violence in his light brown eyes, and my heart started racing from the anticipation of being hit so many times. The feeling made me hesitate. Unsure of what to do next, I wondered whether I should act more fearful. He lorded over me, showing me how big and intimidating he could be. I just can't be with you anymore. You cling too much. Honestly, I need someone stronger, better than you. Please, I said and cowered, forcing my voice to sound victimized. I knew this would keep him with me for the night. It always worked. Don't do this. He headed toward the front door. I gripped him, clawing at his arm carrying the suitcase. There was no way I'd allow him to go, at least not without me. You can't leave me. I need you. And you think I want kids with you? Not ever. He shoved me out of the way, carrying all of his belongings. You'll hear from my lawyer to put a stop to this. And if need be, you'll be forced to abort. No, you can't go. I raced behind him and allowed the made-up tears to fall. You're leaving me when I just told you we're pregnant? I can't do this without you. You should have thought about that before getting yourself knocked up, he said, and shoved me, making my body crash backward, creating a hole as I crushed the drywall. He lifted his fist, and I faked a flinch by closing my eyes while waiting for a blow to follow. When he didn't hit me, my stomach nodded. That always got him to stay. Shoot. He needed a little more coaxing. I yelled, please, I can be what you need me to be. Stupid cow, he bellowed and slammed the door behind him. Now the tears fell from my face for real. The babies had been implanted and there was no way they weren't coming. We're not over, I hollered after him. How could he do this, I thought. I'd found him on a dating app, just like Fairy Godmother told me to do. He was mine. I ripped out my phone with shaky hands and navigated to the locator app. He didn't know it, but I'd been tracking him. I wiped the tears from my eyes as I glared at the phone. Let's see, I whispered. I'm going to become whoever you need me to be till you realize how much you want me, need me, so we can be a family. I got rolling down the highway and followed the tracker app for about 40 minutes when I exited on Memorial Drive in Stone Mountain, Georgia, and finally turned onto Mountain View Street. The road was dark, curvy, and weaved. I had to flick on my bright lights. After his inevitable departure, I got myself together, forcing glamour that looked like a sexier female into place. It had to be impeccable. Thanks for listening, guys. I also narrated the audiobook if you'd like to listen to me read it on Audible.
Wow, thank you so much, Alicia. I think if you look at the chat, you can find out how people were following along with the attention and the relationship that you were building in that story. That was great. Really appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you.
Our second reader today is Ren Hutchings. Ren Hutchings is a speculative fiction writer, writing mentor, and history grad. She spent most of the past decade working in game development, while also plotting twisty space novels. She loves pop science, unexplained mysteries, 90s music, collecting outdated electronics, and pondering about alternative universes. Ren, over to you.
Hi, I'll be reading from my space opera, Under Fortunate Stars, and I'm going to be reading a flashback scene where we find out how some of the main characters meet for the first time. Jareth sat in a dingy bar, ensconced in a small booth near the back. The place was populated with the usual cargo outpost denizens, a mixture of hauler crews, scrap dealers, repair engineers, and a handful of merchants that fit various descriptions of the word unscrupulous. Half of the overhead lights were burned out, and the floor was sticky under Jareth's feet. Still, for the first time in a long time, Jareth might have described his mood as relaxed. His business on Pilar Outpost was all but completed. A docking token bearing his ship's berth ID rested in his jacket pocket, alongside the card that contained his newly validated cargo permits. There had been no problems clearing his cargo. The official who scanned the permits had barely even glanced up. 120 crates, purporting to be a shipment of live squid, had already been loaded onto the ship. Miraculously, the cargo had all fit. Jareth smiled to himself. "What are you smiling about?" Lee grumbled, returning to the table with 2 glasses of Agnatha in his hands. He wrinkled his nose. "Gods, I thought you said this was the best bar on Pilar." "It's the only bar on Pilar, unless you go down to the lower level," Jareth said. "And trust me, you don't want to go down to the lower level." League put his elbows on the table as he sat down, then pulled them back abruptly, wiping at the streak of grime that stained the sleeve of his black jacket. He shoved one of the glasses toward Jareth, then sniffed the liquid in his own glass. "Ugh, they called this Agnatha," he muttered. "I thought I'd be glad to get off that garbage ship until I saw this place." "Would you stop it? There is nothing wrong with the ship." Jareth's mild annoyance didn't erase his smile. "It's junk, Jerry. It's salvage, and it is falling apart." "It was salvage," Jareth corrected. "It's been refurbished." "I'll be shocked if we even survive this trip, never mind the rest of it. I seriously can't understand how you're not dead." Jareth drew his shoulders back and laughed. "Same goes for you." His hand shook as he held his glass aloft, Agnatha dripping inelegantly over his thumb. "Here's to us, huh? Still alive, still undefeatable. To us, still fools." League swallowed a mouthful of spirits and grimaced. "Ugh, it's good to have you back, Jerry, but your judgment has not improved." They sat mostly in silence after that, both of them lost in their thoughts, sipping slowly at the eye-watering drinks until they drained their glasses. Jareth was contemplating getting up to order another, but before he could move, a stranger strolled over to their booth and casually sat down next to him. "Hey, there you are," the stranger said, one gloved hand closing over Jareth's arm. Her voice was loud, overly familiar, but it shook with nerves. "You been waiting for me long? I am so sorry I'm late." Her face was surreal, its expression obscured by heavy cosmetic mods. Pale, reflective eyes gleamed from their sockets like small moons, with a pair of unnaturally sharp cheekbones jutting beneath them. Where her eyebrows should have been, a row of iridescent fish scales gleamed bright as frost over her deep brown skin. A thick cold-weather coat concealed the rest of her shape, its high collar meeting the edges of a formless hat that was tied down over her ears. Her coat sleeves were tucked into matching dark gloves. "Pretend I'm with you," she whispered. "Please." She glanced furtively behind her, and Jareth followed her gaze to the door. There were 2 Union soldiers standing near the bar's entrance. Mid-ranked UWDF officers, by the look of them. Both of them wore light body armor and carried at least one visible weapon. An uneasy hush had fallen over the tables nearest to the door. The taller of the two officers remained by the door, bulky arms folded. Meanwhile, the second soldier entered the room and started walking among the tables, peering from side to side, like a predator watching for things that scurried. "Jerry," Leek said through his teeth, "do something." Jareth turned back to the stranger. She was a problem he hadn't anticipated, but he certainly didn't owe any favors to the United Worlds Defense Forces. "All right," he whispered to her. "Listen, you're with us, but since you're so late, you'll have to buy us a round to make it up to us. We're drinking Agnatha." He gestured toward the bar. Then he held up his empty glass and wiggled it. "Drinks, you got me?" The stranger blinked. Clearly standing up again and walking across the room, right through the line of sight of the UWDF officer, hadn't been in her plans. But after a moment's hesitation, she nodded. She stood up from the bench, adjusted her hat, and started off toward the bar. League's eyes flashed. "Jerry?" "What? I got her away from us, didn't I? Besides, we don't have any drinks." Jareth tilted his head in the direction of the officer, still prowling among the tables. "I don't suppose the Deffies came in here for a drink, though." By the time their new friends started walking back toward them, 3 glasses of Agnatha clutched in her hands, the officer was almost in front of their table. The stranger looked back toward the door, where the other soldier was still standing guard. Then she took another step, and another one, her eyes fixed on Jareth and League. She kept walking purposefully toward their booth, holding the drinks straight and steady until she clambered back up onto the bench next to Jareth. Jareth pushed one toward League, and they all lifted their glasses in a silent toast. The officer stopped directly in front of their table, glanced at them once, and then moved on to the next booth. Thank you. And if you would like to win an ebook copy of Under Fortunate Stars, it's part of our giveaway today. So you can check that out. I think the link is probably going to be in the chat.
Indeed, the giveaway link got posted just a moment ago. So if you look back in there, you should see that. You just click on that link and fill out the form for us. That was a lot of fun. I think people really enjoyed getting to know those characters. So thanks for the introduction, Under Fortunate Stars. All right. Our third reader today is Anna Kashina. Anna Kashina is a critically acclaimed award-winning author of the Majat Code series, featuring adventure, swordplay, intrigue, and romance in a historical fantasy setting. She is a biomedical scientist for her day job and a published author of 7 novels, featuring elements of world mythology, martial arts, and romance in exotic multicultural settings. Are we ready for Anna's video? Or maybe it's just...
Yes, sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction. Can you hear me well?
Yes, take it away, Anna.
Yeah, so first, I wanted to announce my giveaway will be a gift certificate to an online bookstore where you can get my books and some of the other very interesting books by other authors. And I'll be reading from chapter 1 called Betrayal, and it's happening 17 years ago. Ghassan heard the shouting from all the way down the narrow stone passageway leading to the entrance to the Serai. A woman, her voice raising to a near scream and eventually dissolving into sobs. He broke into a run, noting in passing the slanted crescent of the waning moon peeking in through the narrow window overhead. Not the average hour to expect visitors in the Dalgir command center, disguised as a scholarly hall. The door at the end of the curving passage stood ajar. Gusts of cool night air washed through the entrance hallway, filling it with a sense of desert rosemary and creosote. As Ghassan skidded around the last bend, he caught a view of the moonlit path outside, winding to the city down below. Dark shapes loomed along it, outlined against the white sand. Boulders? Odd. Just yesterday, when he arrived here from the Empire's capital for the celebration of the Sun Festival, the path had been clear. He peered closer, a chill creeping down his spine as the object began to take shape. Bodies. Dear cell. His mind jerked into a heightened state of alertness, taking in the details of the scene much faster than he could possibly process them. People rushing back and forth at the Serai entrance ahead. A woman crouching on the doorstep leading outside, clutching a bundle of rolled-up cloth to her chest. Half a dozen bodies lining up the path outside, visible through the open doorway. The gleam of the dead soldiers' armor, their dark red cloaks shifting in the wind. Red cloaks, Cell Almighty save us all. The logical part of Ghassan's mind told him he couldn't possibly see it right, not from this distance. But the other panicked part kept nagging him with the same urgency as the woman's sobs. From here, he couldn't see the cloak's style or fully make out the bronze gold patterns on the dead soldiers' breastplates, but his imagination painted the rest as clearly as if he was standing up close. The one-of-a-kind gear worn only by the Royal Chelimar Red Cloaks, the elite unit that personally guarded the Queen. Ghassan darted forward to the crouching woman. Not the Queen, thank the prophets. She looked twice the age, in her 40s at least. Torn strands of gold beads glittered in her disheveled hair. Her jeweled slippers far too ornate and impractical for a run through the sands. A noble, a high official of the royal court? Ghassan forced away the guesses, not nearly as important right now as the immediacy of her need. He knelt by the woman's side, edging out the young Dalgir girl who was making vague moves around the woman, clearly with very little clue of what to do. The woman's clothes and hair were soaked with blood. Ghassan hoped it wasn't all her own. His eyes glossed over the long scratch at the base of her neck, not life-threatening despite its ugly look, down to a deeper stab wound below the collarbone, oozing with slow but steady gushes of blood. Cursed Irfat. He wasn't sure he could possibly do anything about that one, not with the distance she ran here from the royal palace, likely after she incurred the wound. Ghassan reached forward to pry the bundle the woman was clutching in her arms, as if it was more precious to her than the life seeping out of her. She held on for a moment longer, then released her hold, meeting his eyes with plea. Protect her, please. She's the only one left now. Her? What the hell is she talking about? Keep still. Ghassan handed the bundle to the Dalgir girl, still lingering behind him, then ripped his medicine bag off his belt, fumbling for bandage and disinfecting liquid. The Imperial soldiers are coming. Imperial soldiers? Ghassan frowned. The kingdom of Chelimar was under the Empire protection. Their queen was about to sign a treaty that would give Chelimar full province status in exchange for relinquishing their ancient succession claim. What could this richly dressed woman, escorted by the royal guards, possibly fear from the Imperial soldiers? Betrayed! The woman's voice faltered and grew stronger again under Ghassan's urgent gaze. The treaty was a trap. Our queen! The woman gasped, her mouth opening and closing like that of a fish thrown ashore. Don't talk, Ghassan snapped, clasping a fresh bandage to her neck, while his other hand ripped open her cloak to reveal the mess inside. Cursed Irfat. For the first time in his healer's career, he felt helpless, made worse by the fact that no matter what, he couldn't possibly show it. The woman's pale lips twitched. Don't bother with my wounds, Dalgir. Just listen. The queen, the royal family, the red cloaks, they're all dead. The only one left, my queen? She gasped, her eyes rolling to stare at the passage just past Ghassan's shoulder. For an eerie moment, it seemed to Ghassan as if these words were directed not at him, but at someone standing there in the shadows. But he had no time to wonder. The woman was getting delirious, another bad sign he couldn't possibly ignore. Save your strength, he said. You can tell me all about this when you recover. Her lips twitched into a ghostly smile. I said, listen, you stubborn man. My life is not important right now. The Imperial soldiers, they will come after me. No matter what, they must not find her, our savior. When the time comes, she can set things right. She didn't finish her sentence as her entire body went limp. Damn it, no, not on my watch. Yet even as the thought raced through Ghassan's mind, He knew there was nothing he could possibly do, not even with his healing skill already famed within the circle, despite his relatively young age of 35. He lowered the woman to the floor and turned to the Dalgir girl standing behind him. She held the bundle the dying woman had brought, gently, her arms curved around it, rocking it. Protect her, damn it. Is this? Ghassan's skin prickled as he saw the girl's slow nod. Yes, a baby. Bloody hell. A girl, I assume. The Dalgired girl briefly lifted the baby's wrappings, then nodded as she tucked in the loose cloth. A distant smile played on her lips, oddly calm amidst the havoc around them. You don't need to concern yourself with this baby, Dal-Ghassan, she said. We have everything we need in this Serai to take care of her. Ghassan rose to his feet so fast that he felt lightheaded. It's not the taking care of her that I'm concerned about right now. It's the Imperial soldiers who I assume will arrive here shortly to look for this woman in her charge. His eyes drifted to the limp shape on the floor. At least the Imperial soldiers could no longer harm the woman, whoever she was. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. I believe I'm close to 8 minutes. Thank you.
Wow, that was riveting. Some fantastic action, setting all kinds of great hooks there for conflict. I can hardly wait to find out what happens next. You can find on his website in the chat and also the handout where you'll find out a little bit more, keep track of our readers and the things that they are reading from. So without further ado, let's move on to our fourth reader. Our fourth reader is D.C. Gomez. D.C. Gomez is an award-winning USA Today best-selling author, podcaster, motivational speaker, and coach. She writes both nonfiction as well as fiction books ranging from urban fantasy to children's books. Can't wait to hear what we're going to hear today.
Hi, everyone. How's everybody doing? I am so excited to be here with you guys. I'm going to be reading from Plague Unleashed, which is book 2 in the urban fantasy series, The Intern Diaries. And I'm going to be giving you a snip of chapter 7. And this is from the perspective of Isis Black, who's our main character. So let's see if you guys enjoy this. Our ride from Bobby Ferguson Park was quick and uneventful. We were all lost in thought. Not even Constantine spoke during the whole drive, and he was notorious for his ongoing commentaries. We looked like a funeral procession when we entered the loft. Death was by the glass window, staring at the first floor, or at least thought she was. I never considered how far in distance or in time Death was able to penetrate. Those thoughts were too spooky for me to ponder. The odd thing was, she was holding a mug. I hope you don't mind that I finished your coffee, Bob. You have a fabulous blend. I had no idea Bob had his own coffee blend. I was a tea and hot chocolate kind of drinker, so I never asked. Not at all, boss lady. I'll make some more. Bob rushed to the fridge to grab his blend. I wasn't sure why Bob kept his coffee in the refrigerator. How bad is it? Constantine was not wasting time beating around the bush. He dropped on the tiny dining room table and got comfortable. Bartholomew and I looked at each other and then followed suit. We each took a chair on the far side of the table so we could see each other better. If it's any consolation, he wasn't a walking dead. Death took one more sip of her coffee and placed the mug on the kitchen table. She turned to face the rest of us, waiting for the information to register. Does that mean we don't have a zombie problem? That's a good thing, right? Bartholomew asked, optimistic, but by the look of Death's face, we were in trouble. My dear, is worse. He wasn't dead, but he wasn't human either. Whatever happened to him somehow fragmented his conscience. Death had turned back around to face the glass window. Death, what happened to the soul? Constantine said the words very softly, almost afraid to ask. It's gone. Gone? Not again. Is someone stealing souls again? How is that possible that he was moving around? I wasn't in the mood for any more angry witches. Not really stolen, more like not truly connected. Death turned around. Let me explain. This might be an oversimplification, so please bear with me. When a human being dies, the mind and the soul forge into one so they can transcend the body. They become part of the higher consciousness. The mind grounds the soul to the world while the soul waits for nirvana. Hence the reason we can transport them to the next stage. In this case, the mind was gone. There was nothing there to direct the soul in the process, so the soul was banished from existence. Is that what happens to people when they're in a vegetable state? Bob asked from the kitchen counter as he poured Death more coffee. He handed her the mug. Thank you, Bob. Not really. In a vegetable state, the soul and mind are still fully conscious, while the body is not reacting. The process is still the same. In this case, something had altered the process and created an abnormal condition I can't explain. The fact that death couldn't explain, that was even scarier to me. Just to confirm, you don't have the soul? Constantine asked. Death shook her head. That was the reason she was upset. A soul was lost, and there was no way for us to find it. We were in some serious trouble. How many more are there? She was looking out the window again as she spoke. He was the third one I seen, but the only one that has died. I volunteered the information since nobody else was going to do it. Complicated. They're vicious and dangerous, but if you kill them, their souls end up in limbo. We need to figure out what caused this and reverse it. In the meantime, find a way to contain the victims and not kill them. Death looked at us expectantly. Unfortunately, Isis, your gifts are not going to work with them since they don't have consciousness. Oh, this was getting better and better. That's all? For a moment, I thought it was going to be something hard. You wouldn't happen to know who exactly is causing this by any chance. Constantine was dripping with sarcasm. Apparently, Death ignored it since she smiled. I can only think of one being capable of causing this results. Bartholomew, dear, do you mind connecting me to my sister Pestilence, please? Bartholomew jumped from his seat and headed for his command center. Big screen? He asked as he approached the desk. Of course. Nothing small for her. Death answered as she walked behind him. Sister? Wait, Death has a sister? I asked Constantine in the most urgent tone I could find while keeping my voice low. Of course, she's the oldest of 4. Duh. Constantine replied like I was supposed to know this. Wait, what? Death has 2 more siblings? I was dumbfounded. When did this happen? Constantine walked over to me and slapped me over the head. Ouch! I yelled, not because it hurt, but for the principle of the matter. Thank God his class were not out. Seriously, girl, aren't you Catholic or something? Doesn't Father Francis have Sunday school for adults? He was looking serious. I was Catholic, probably not a very good one by the looks of it. I'm so lost, Constantine. Just tell me. I wasn't too proud to ask. You heard of the book of Revelation, right? The last one in the Bible? Ring a bell? Constantine looked at me, focused as he spoke, so I just nodded. I was afraid to open my mouth and sound even dumber. That's a blessing. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse are death and the rest of the siblings. Oh God, is Judgment Day coming? Is this the apocalypse? My voice cracked. I was on the verge of panic. How did I miss this? If I worked for death, did that mean the other horsemen were also real? I was going to faint. Isis, calm the hell down and shut up. This is not the apocalypse is happening. That only happens when all 4 horsemen get together, and this hardly warrants a family reunion. By the way, that piece of information was in your manual. When are you planning to read the darn thing? Constantine had a way of stopping my rambling hysterics with facts. I was going to burn that manual. Well, I wasn't sure how to reply. Yes, spill it out. Constantine did not wait patiently at all. I thought we only covered the French benefits. Bartholomew explained that. I didn't think you would explain world destruction in an employee manuals. Anyways, what is pestilence like? I wanted to change the topic as quickly as possible. Everyone, that is halfway through chapter 7 in Plague Unleashed. If you guys have any questions, I will be giving away a copy of the book. So please go ahead and sign up.
Wow, that was delightful. Thank you so much, DC. That was a lot of fun. A little worrisome that I think maybe it's time to read that manual. I know I would like to. So, our 5th reader today is M. Dressler. M. Dressler is the author of 6 novels, including the award-winning The Last Ghost series. Her stories have appeared in the Kenyon Review, Lit Hub, Creative Nonfiction, and the Massachusetts Review. And her honors include fellowships from Fulbright, the Carson McCullers Center, Hedgebrook, and Paisano. She lives and writes in Oregon and southern Utah. Look forward to hearing what you have.
Thank you so much. Oh my goodness, can everyone hear me all right? Yeah, wonderful. Thank you guys. Thank you so much to our wonderful hosts and to my sister writers. What a joy to be with you today. So yes, I'm going to read from the 3rd book in the Last Ghost series. Our Eyes at Night. The Last Ghost series is entirely narrated by a ghost named Emma Rose Finnis, who died in the early 1900s. She drowns. And I'm not giving anything away there. We know that from the very first page of the very first book. And what we learn is that during her short life, she died when she was 19. She was constantly relegated to the shadows and to the margins. She is female. She is poor, working class. She is a domestic servant. She is a housemaid, and she is an immigrant. And so throughout her life, she is very much invisible. When she drowns, she sinks to the bottom of the ocean, but miraculously finds that she is rising as a ghost, and she's able to set foot on land. And at that moment, she learns that even though she has arisen from the dead, she will still have to be in the shadows, invisible, in the margins, because in the strange world that I have created for her, there are what are called ghost cleaners. And these cleaners live to eradicate the dead, to eradicate spirits whom they believe to be a burden upon us, the living. Emma, however, refuses to go gently into that good night. She refuses really to enact all of the common tropes that we associate with ghosts. She refuses to feel invisible. The more we follow her journey, she refuses to be invisible. She refuses to enact the solitary ghost thing. You know, she finds allies, she finds friends, she finds others like her. And the main thing that she does as we go through the series is that she does the one thing that ghosts aren't supposed to do, which is she continues to learn and to grow, right? Ghosts aren't supposed to change. They're supposed to be static once they're dead. And she continues to move, right? Ghosts are often tied to a place. She refuses to do that. As Our Eyes at Night opens, she is with a band of ghosts crossing. She has left the Pacific coast where she died, crossed over the mountains of the Sierra Nevada, and is now heading down into the desert southwest, the canyon country of southern Utah. And I'm delighted to let you hear a little bit of her voice in Our Eyes at Night. I've been a ghost long enough to know death is no less surprising than life. Surprised I was when I was dragged to the bottom of the sea and drowned more than a century ago. Surprised because I thought the wild Pacific coast was my home. I was wrong. Surprised I was because I thought the sea would be my friend until it set its heavy boots upon my shoulders. Astonished I was when, after I drowned, I discovered I wasn't yet over. I found I could crawl out of the sunlit waves onto the sand, and with my red ribbon still in my hair and my long black skirt now strangely dry, and still wearing underneath my shirtwaist the slip of my soul, I stood and greeted the day. I found I could walk and look around, and having gone as far west, it seems, as any poor Irish servant in America can go, I was facing east. You begin an afterlife by keeping mum. That is how a ghost best survives. Anger, words, strong emotion of any kind you learn gives the ghost away. So you stay cold and you let yourself feel nothing, for if you do, you are finished. If you can agree to do that, to remain invisible, then you'll last in the shadows and sun for one more day. Until one day you ask yourself, how is this any different really than how they expected me to live? What's the point of an afterlife after all, if you don't do anything fresh with it? It was a smattering of us now, school children and grown-ups, young and old, and in between, who made it out of the mountains and down onto the plains. The earth turned hard and white with salt in places. Some of us already knew what a desert was, having crossed it before, but I'd never seen the like of it, so barren yet beautiful a place. The gnarled, half-leafless trees, the bones scattered, not only of once living things, but of machines and towns and fence posts and windmills fallen on their backs, of riverbeds dried and the earth rumpled into heaps. Sometimes the view was as bare as the logged hills of my childhood, at other times stubbled with spiny bushes that would have pricked and hurt us if we felt things in the ordinary way, instead of with our sight, the sense we ghosts are left to feel and shape and stroke the remembered world with. We settled onto the dry ground and walked on as the more open and strange it became, this land streaked with bright colors under a white blue sky, while the sun poured down, surely hot, even if the heat didn't trouble us, and so wide it spread flat on the ground like an egg cracked open. Underneath my skirt and boots, the crust of the earth held what looked like tiny, hardy mosses in its grasp. There are living things here, I thought, but they're low and careful like us, and not so many living people, but luck. A desert is a place where a band of ghosts can walk for mile upon mile and let ourselves be visible in our happiness and joy without fear of being seen, and stretch our souls and limbs and hearts and marvel while the children chase after tumbling weeds, their schoolmaster minding them, no, don't get too far ahead, while the loving couple that joined us at the last ravine, crawling out of their rusted car accident, hold hands and sigh with pleasure. And the blackbirds follow us all at a distance, high and circling, confused that we don't drop down in our tracks and make a tasty meal for them. We grew easy, all of us together, as time passed and we walked, because there was no one to threaten us as we allowed ourselves to see and feel and show our bodies and shapes freely to each other. And I suppose it was also because we have, none of the quarrels the living do. There's no worry to be had over food or water or rest or whose bank is the largest. None of us has any more sun on our plate than any other. None of us is stronger or weaker, of more or less value. We are all dead. We can all walk day and night and never grow tired. The sun and wind and the whirling dust devils move through us, and we're neither scratched nor scarred, or at least no more than we had been before. I often walked at the head of our little band, studying and thinking. The desert, it's a world that's hard for the living, but it's perfect for us, I've decided, a great adventure. And perhaps when the living have drained the whole world dry, which some say they are bound to do in the end, it is we, the dead, who'll inherit it, being better suited to the climate, as it were. I can't say precisely when we began to feel restless. But I've learned to see and read the souls around me as best I can, and in most ways I carry the burden of being the leader of this band, as I have been since the mountains. So at one high noon, I looked back and asked the others if they felt it was time we stopped and haunted for a spell. They all nodded eagerly. Haunting is lingering to enjoy a place. Haunting is also to leave a mark, so you know you haven't vanished. Thank you, and I'm doing a giveaway too as well. Hope you'll take a chance and join.
Wow, that was fantastic. I think I'm going to start using that. Next time I want to just hang out, I said, I'm just going to haunt for a while. Thank you very much, M. Dressler. Our final reader today is Jody Lynn Nye. Jody Lynn Nye lists her main career activity as spoiling cats. When not engaged upon this worthy occupation, she writes fantasy and science fiction, most of it with a humorous bent. Since 1987, she has published over 50 books and more than 170 short stories. Jody teaches writing seminars and is coordinating judge for the Writers of the Future contest. Jody, take it away.
Oh, thank you. You're all hard acts to follow, but I will try. Donna Keen-Eye's longsword, carefully cleaned from the last battle and wrapped in its oiled cloth, and her shield with its red stripe down the center bumped against the tall woman's back with every step she took. The red pennant that indicated her status as a mercenary fluttered from the hilt and tickled the back of her neck under her long brown braid. Her legs were tired, and she had finally worn through the thin place in the sole of her left boot. Cabbagetown, the gold-lettered plaque read as the track changed from mud to gravel at the edge of a village. Donna glanced around with pleasure. Life was here, not death. It was market day. Hardy merchants wrangled with their customers, apple-cheeked women in kirtles and wimples, or tall men with colorful liripipe hoods. Farmers argued about the relative merits of this or that cow. Dogs slept in the sun. A plump gray puss slept tucked up on a windowsill beside the scarlet flower in a pot. An orange-striped mother cat, her teats heavy with milk, wound around the legs of the tables on which the merchants' goods were displayed. "Are you here to conquer us?" asked a little girl with long plaits tied with blue ribbon. Donna laughed. "No, I'm just back from the wars." "You were fighting?" asked the biggest boy, hair the color of fresh wood and eyes of leaf green. "Indeed I was. I killed 8 men in the last battle at Songhelm. I and my fellow sellswords were in the front line when we laid siege to the pirates' stronghold at Valoran on the coast. We broke down the walls in only 3 days and saved the town." Ooh, the children gasped, awed. "Did you burn their boats? Did you meet the king? Did you find bags of gold?" Now that she had proved friendly, questions bubbled up out of the children like steam in a stew pot. Perhaps I'll tell you a tale or two later. I just want to rest now, Donna said with a smile. She turned to the butcher who was hacking a slab of meat into collops. Where's a good place to get a meal and a bed for the night? The man stuck the tip of his carving knife into the chopping block and consulted the sky. Oh, well, there's Brenner's Tavern or Mistress Peck's. The biggest of the boys, bored by such ordinary talk, picked up a stone and heaved it at the orange cat. It struck her in the side. She let out a cry and skittered underneath the weaver's table next to the butcher. Stop that, Donna ordered. The boys paid no attention. They picked up more stones and continued to pelt the cat, who mewed piteously, trying to find a place to hide. For God's love, what's the matter with you? Whose children are those? She asked the tradesfolk. Just children, the butcher replied with a shrug. Just a cat. What do you care? It's wrong, Donna exclaimed angrily. Cats are the gods' creatures, the same as we are. The man blew a derisive raspberry. Donna felt her temper flaring. Those brats were hurting an innocent animal, and he didn't intend to do a thing about it. After all the killing she had seen, senseless cruelty fired her blood. Mind that for me, she said, thrusting her pack into the butcher's arms. She drew her sword and stuck it, point quivering, into the nearest tree. No need for it in what she intended to do. As she turned, the children instantly divined her intention. They dropped the rest of their stones and fled down the street. With a surge of strength, she hurtled down the hill, angling to come up in front of the largest boy, the initial stone thrower. Now we'll see how much you enjoy a thrashing, she said, grabbing him by the arm. She sat down and swung him over her knee. That's for assaulting a poor innocent beast, and that's for harming a mother, and that's for not listening to your elders. Her open hand smacked down hard on his upturned backside again and again. By the time Donna marched her captive up the hill, a crowd had gathered. What the hell do you think you're doing to our children? Demanded the weaver. They needed a lesson, Donna stated, thrusting the boy toward the crowd. Cruelty to animals is a sin. You should teach them kindness. These animals are your friends and protectors. You're a fine one to talk about holding life sacred, a gaunt, gray-haired woman declared, shaking a finger at her. That red flag of yours gives you away. You work for a price, killing for pay. Donna walked over to the trees beside the butcher's stall and pulled her sword free. I accept a fee to defend what I think is right, good wife. I only use my weapon in worthy service. I never harm anyone who cries me mercy and lays down his weapons. Thank you. She tugged her pack out of the butcher's limp arms. I am only passing through. I am not looking for a fight. All I want to do is sup here and sleep, and I'll be on my way in the morning. Leave our town, the boy's father declared, shaking his fist. We don't want you here, sellsword. No one here wants your services or your presence. Donna growled to herself. If she hadn't been so tired, she'd given them all the flat of her hand. I'm on the common property, and I claim the king's peace. She raised an eyebrow, defying anyone to disagree with her. No one did. The king's peace meant that they couldn't drive her off the green or within a body length of any public highway. Donna watched longingly as a cluster of merrymakers followed Mistress Peck through the cheerfully painted wooden door at the corner of the square. Beer, she thought wistfully. Roast beef. Tempting smells floated out to her on the evening breeze. She jumped back in alarm as something cold and slimy fell on her hand. The tabby cat she had rescued sat at her feet with tail wound around its paws, looking up at her with big green saucer-like eyes. The thing that had fallen off Donna's hand was a freshly caught trout. Taking pity on the hungry traveler, eh? She said, reaching down to scratch the cat behind the ears. Thank you. It'll be most welcome. With flint and tinder from her pack, she struck a small fire, gutted and staked the fish over it to cook. It was delicious. The cat watched her eat, then disappeared into the darkness. Donna banked the fire and settled herself uncomfortably against the tree. Birdsong woke her at false dawn. Donna's free hand clenched on something unfamiliar, which squirmed. She struggled to sit up. A heavy weight on her chest and legs shifted. Her hand fumbled for her sword. A blanket of felines rolled or stalked off Donna's body, leaving behind cold morning air. Donna gaped. They had spent the night on her, providing her with the living blanket. But that was not all. From the protected hollow in the crook of her arm sprawled 4 kittens. The mother cat unwound herself from a ball next to Donna's head and came over to rub against Donna's jaw, then began to lick the kittens vigorously. Well, so much for my reputation for vigilance, Donna said, touching the little ones' delicate heads. The kits were so young, their ears were still rounded. I'm glad my sisters in arms weren't here to see me sleep through that. Thank you for keeping me warm. A kindness for a kindness. The mother cat arched her back upward, then stalked away, leaving her kittens in the curve of Donna's arm. Wait, I'm not a nursemaid, Donna called, then chided herself. How could she expect a cat to understand what she was saying? She began to repair her torn boot. A soft but insistent mew interrupted her thoughts. The orange cat had returned, laying another fish at her feet. Her right paw was wet up to the shoulder, but the rest of her was dry. You've decided to feed me, eh? Donna said, picking up the fish. It was a mature brook trout, twice the length of her hand. Plenty of good meat on it. The cat chirruped expectantly. Is it out of gratitude? Donna asked. Because you already thanked me last night. Then, to Donna's surprise, the cat walked from the fish to the pennant hanging from Donna's shield and back again, rubbing up against the mercenary's knee with each pass. Donna let the corners of her mouth perk up with amusement. You couldn't be hiring me? The cat chirruped again. How can you understand what I said yesterday? How could you possibly know what I do? The cat gave her a wise look. What is it you want me to do then? Protect you? Or you and your babies? The cat climbed into Donna's lap, briefly licked the top of each kitten's head, then stared up at the warrior again. By the gods, I believe you are hiring me. Why not? Very well, it's a bargain. She put out a hand to seal the deal, as she did with her human clients, and laughed at herself as the cat sniffed her fingers. Here then, she said, formally, unhooking the pennant. My gauge is the symbol of my service. Carry it until my duty to you is discharged. She wound the streamer twice around the cat's neck, tying the loose ends in a bow. A bit gaudy with your coloring, my lady, but not too bad. The butcher passed by with a cart full of meat, saw the red streamer up around the cat's neck, and snorted. How much is it paying you? He asked. 2 fish a day, Donna replied. I've had better wages, but I've had worse too. You can read the rest of the story in my book, and I hope that you will enter to win the free copy. Thank you so much.
There we go. That was really delightful, Jody Lynn Nye. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was from Defender of the Small. So all of the kitty lovers out there are going, "Aw," and now need to know what happens next. So I would like to say a thanks again to everybody who attended the reading today.